On today's podcast, we had Tumai come on. So much wisdom shared in this podcast, especially around birth, the breath, life in general. Just so much stuff, so much wisdom. Tumai has learnt over the years and all that. Tumai is a breathwork facilitator as well, and does business coaching and a whole bunch of other stuff. I can rattle off the things. I highly suggest go check out all his pages. Even do one of his courses. I would highly suggest as well. So I'll link all that in the description below. So make sure you check all that out. And also, too, guys, if you want to grab a Creating a Legacy shirt, head over to my website, mitchellcrocker.com. And for all other services than that too, just jump on there. And yeah, that is it. And for every other podcast as well is on there as well. So yeah, we'll dive into today's episode. Thank you, guys. Welcome to the show, Tumai. How are you today, man?
Thanks for having me, Mitch. I'm really well. I'm feeling surprisingly really safe and super honored right now because I'm excited to connect with you. I haven't spoken to you for a while.
Yeah, it's probably, what was it? Mid-December, early December? I think the last time we actually properly connected in.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it's been a while. So yeah, I've been actually excited for this chat, to be honest. There's a lot we could probably dive into, bounce around. You got so many different modalities, experience with things in such a short amount of time on Earth. So it's actually quite cool. So I think the start, man, I reckon let's start from the start. Let's go right deep into your story, uncovering yourself, overcoming anxiety, stress, and also finding the breath as well. So yeah, let's get to the beginning.
Right. So to start off with, who am I, or what am I all about, and how did I arrive or constantly arrive in the moment-to-moment blessing that we have right now? Well, essentially, it started off with this beautiful natural birth, and in my breathwork training through Alchemy of Breath, a global academy, one of the first components that they had us dive deep into when we do our shadow work is actually birth. We all know that the first therapeutic tool is breath, prana, spirit, this way of being able to inhale and work with spirit through our body. And so the aspect of birth is a very important key component to understand. Different birth types pave out different stories, and they say that our first wound, our first hurt, happens when we have our first separation from the womb itself. The better we can understand our birth, the better we can understand and reflect how we react, the story that plays out, and the intimate software or programming that has been installed way before us perhaps even knowing. A classic example is I was a natural birth. Mum decided to have me natural, and it was such an amazing experience. The conversations that I had with my mum, who was with us in the present, and my father that I didn't know very well, and now I have a very good relationship with him because he's passed. My birth was natural, meaning that I was so loved and so wanted. Natural births also mean that I pass through the channels and the canals, the birthing canals. It also means that I have a very good relationship with my mother, and there's so many other aspects to that. My eldest brother and sister, upon inquiry with mum, were both C-section. The C-section in the therapeutic world or holistic world has a lot to do with, I can't make it on my own. I need help. I'm not good enough. So somebody else needs to intervene on this natural process. So you can see already how things start to play out. And so there are very big differences between myself and my older brother and sister and how they relate to the world, how they feel wanted, how they need to be received and supported. Whereas for me, I've got a great relationship with mum and with dad. In fact, my sister caught me and it was all natural from then on out. I didn't know how much or how important that would be, as I started to grow up through life, went through the normal ups and downs. But what stabilized me was coming back home and finding this relationship back with mum, actually. When I was younger, leaving mum and proving to her that I could exist in this world on my own had its beautiful mechanic. There's archetypes there that play out. But then you go out on your journey, you pick up some lessons, and you actually return back home after many years. And the boy that mum once knew that she gave birth to, has now matured and become a man. And it's like, what lessons do I have to teach her? How can she receive me now that I'm a man? Is there some healing work that I can do now that I've grown up? Are there other aspects or perspectives in life that I've learned that I'd like to show her? Yeah, mum, I can do this and I can do that. So there was this letting go between mum and I. Then I went off on my own, and then I returned back home, and there's this receivership between mother and son. Mother and son archetype, very important perspective to learn or information to understand. Very powerful, because we need more than ever kings in this world. Kings provide safety for queens, but how can the king provide safety to another queen if they first haven't harmonized that relationship, their first love with mum, their first interaction with the feminine, which is mum? So for men, for boys that are growing up, very important to understand relationships between mother and son. Father and daughter, totally different archetype to lean into and understand. But mother-son, very, very important for more healing work to be done there. And so it began. There I was, born, blessed with both parents from New Zealand. That's a bit about day one birth from my side. Yeah, what else would you like to know, brother?
Yeah, like it's pretty interesting, man. Like I'll touch base back onto the archetypes and that, because it's something that he's been coming up big time for me, is how much, I guess the feminine normally comes up first and then it goes into the masculine kind of thing. But even like talking about the birth stuff, and then because this is something I did a bit of reflection on last year, is that because I was a C-section as well, before I was conceived, my mum had a miscarriage within, I think I was a couple months after the miscarriage kind of scene I was received. Then, mum wasn't sure if she was ready to have a child and all that kind of stuff, and how much that kind of, plays out later on in life. It's like, the whole like good enough story and all that. And then also too, if what you're saying with the mother and, son relationship is like, it's the most important kind of relationship that we have, as you're saying, and how much like most things start with the feminine, and then once you jump into the masculine, it starts to circle back around to the feminine kind of thing. And it's like with the both of these archetypes, it's like, I guess like in this day and age, we don't really give, I'm trying to think where I'm going on this tangent a little bit, is that, both parties don't really hold space for each other that well at this point in time.
Yeah. And because we're not unaware, unconscious to the fact that we are unconscious, how can we raise awareness to first the unconscious, and then how can we bring in information that families can work with? It's actually been a long study, and the body of information is really in depth. We can go through some intricate details for those that are listening as well, and you can clip it to share online. But this is very important, especially for the breath workers that are into offering rebirthing breath work, and being able to come back to the womb to resolve the first wound is extremely important work. And we need so many more rebirthing breathwork facilitators. The first wound or degree of separation, we're in mum, in her womb, and there is this singularity. We're connected, we're a part of her. She breathes us, she feeds us, and that through the birthing process, there is this pain, this separation, and in that moment, when we move from the world of singularity to the world of duality, we get birthed into waters, ideally, and we come up through the waters and we take our first breath of life. We receive exactly the tool that we need to support us during that experience, that first life. That is the moment where there is animation. Spirit comes into us, our first experience with using our respiratory system. So there's a lot to be found inside of the birth itself. So we can go through some of the aspects. Natural births, there are two poles to consider. So there's the poles of, we know one pole, there's a pole of fear, another pole, there's a pole of love. Now, interestingly enough, in this dualistic world that we live in and having this human experience, this is the duality that's playing out. And we've come back to experience both of the poles. And the way that we can find some pathway back to singularity, back to harmony, is actually embracing both of the poles in this human experience first. When we play with both of the poles, light, shadow, good, evil, red, blue, these two opposing forces, in this experience that we have right now in the three-dimensional, they seem like they're in different planes. In the world of singularity, they are actually the same. Very, very important distinction to make. Now, a natural birth would have tendencies or software programming, perhaps we can call it, to say that I don't matter, I don't make a difference on one pole, or I don't count. Everything was easy and easy with flow, so there's no real importance to it. Why does that person get a little bit more attention to the process than myself? On the other pole, it's more like greater ease with life. Things happen for me. Life is happening for me all the time. I'm constantly going through the motions of life. This is what happens, the two poles that play out for a natural birth. For a C-section, cesarean, it's more the emergency. It's just, I have to be rescued, or I can't do it on my own. The other side of it is like, or if we continue down that side, it's more like I feel like I'm interrupted. I'm not understood, and what not understood translates into is anger. So we would instantly, what happens is anger translates in the body. If you understand metaphysics and how energy lands in the body, the signatures of the body, that's liver. So straight away, liver, anger, not feeling wanted. I can't do it on my own. I can't be understood. Would somebody just listen to me? You can have troubles initiating in conversation, initiating in business, initiating with the world. Another thing that might pop up for C-section is have difficulty completing things. Good starters, not so good finishers. So they need the help, yet they don't want to put up their hand and ask for help. You see how this plays out all the way to the end? Many other aspects would be a fear on one pole for knives, and on another pole, a fascination in knives. Very, very interesting. You may crave touch on one pole or avidly dislike touch on another pole because you're feeling interrupted. Somebody else is touching me. That's not mum. That's not what I'm used to. That's somebody else, right? We could keep going through. There's forceps. There's people that are born with a cord wrapped around their neck, and that has strong inclinations to death and suicide, actually. With the birth, with birth and the umbilical cord being wrapped around the neck, this is like, in order to survive, I have to nearly die. That's one software programming. It's suicide attempt by the baby. What were we trying to do while we were in the womb? Why is there such confusion? Am I the right sex? Am I the right gender even? Right? There is often the feelings of being unwanted, or there is actually, funnily enough, they found the studies, there is a death in the family. And because you're still connected to mum, you view everything through mum. So the experience that mum is having, you're also having, because you're still connected. You're still the one organism, right? Now, what that translates into later on is that we have strong attempts for death or for suicide, confusion between life and death, cut off from your emotions, especially understanding and comprehending emotions, because the head is cut off. We're unable to comprehend and use the mind, yet the body is still experiencing emotions. So there's a disconnect from the brain and from the heart, the head and heart disconnection. And it goes all the way through, brother, like induced, if mum needs help giving birth and she has, she's numbed with medication, right? The numbing itself affects the baby. Many possible imprints like, I can't feel, I'm unconscious, I need to suppress my aliveness in order to live.
It makes a lot of sense, though, what you're saying there. Like, I guess that's like one thing that pops in my head when you talk about that. It's addiction, like, because addictions are to do with numbness, and it's like, oh, so that could be a correlation right there.
So you can see how the rebirthing industry specialized to breath work is extremely important. That's one side, birth. On the other side is death. We've got birth and death. Mm-hmm. Breathwork facilitators also need to be aware of understanding components of death, our final exhale. What does that mean to us? Death, of letting go. What's the exhale like for those that are breathing with us? If they're going through tough times, what's their exhale like when they watch a loved one take their final exhale? How is that moment with them? Can they slow down their own exhale and share the final exhale with a parent, a loved one, somebody that they're going to see off to the next part? So we have death, and then we also have life. Funnily enough, inhale, exhale. It's the beautiful intimacy of the breath. And so, yeah, man, that's a bit about my birth and who I am. I think the harder part of the course that I did as a trained facilitator was they sat me down and they said, Tumai, this is going to be a hard course. And I thought at the time I did so much work on myself, shadow work. I was like, oh, it's going to be fine.
We always think that. Yeah. It's a little trick our ego tells us.
Little did I know that I would be spending 6 months on my birth alone, tears after tears, page after page of deep inquiry into who I am and understanding my birth. I had no idea about my birth. I didn't know I was natural birth, really. Didn't know what the birth was about. And what I mean by that, and for listeners that are listening to the podcast, and for yourself, Mitchell, is we've got the aspect of birth. However, what people overlook is sitting down with the parents and holding a breath with them, getting them to drop into their body and asking, hey, mum, was I wanted during that period of your life? And what was the relationship between you and dad? What did you choose to have me? Was I needed? Was I wanted? Or was it an accident? What was happening behind the scenes? Because in many ways, we're also in dad too. So what was happening with dad? These things shape us. And the deeper you go into this conversation, the more what happens is you bring up a lot in mum, you bring up a lot in dad. But you do that as a facilitator in training so that when it comes out now, oh, wow, I get this beautiful opportunity to hold space for mum or for dad if they need it. So it's been amazing going through the process and learning more about myself.
It's such an amazing process, especially like learning, as you're just recently talking about, learning about mum and dad. And, as much as I guess a lot of people don't want to be like their parents, you pretty much are. You inherit all their good traits, insecurities, and all that. And then like one thing that I've learned through this journey, the more that I've accepted my insecurities, the more that I've accepted my parents for who they are. Like, because I don't really talk, actually, I haven't spoken to my dad for well over 15 years or something along the lines of that. But when I like talk to my mum, like especially over the weekend just gone, it's like, okay, like I've started accepted parts of myself and I can see this, it's starting to be reciprocated now. And I'm not saying like this always is guaranteed going to happen, but it's like so important to, sit down and men, have these conversations, as you said, in the way that you did, and, men in relationships, and especially with self.
Yeah, 100%. And for me, and for many young men out there, if you're listening, I invite you to lean into the realization that our first love was mum. I don't mean to say that in a way that mama's boy or that it's soft by any means. It's rather the utility of that recognition is now we can go back and open up and have more of a heartwarming experience, as opposed to approaching it in a way where we need to protect ourselves by the need to suffice the ego and feel like we're the man or a man. We can open up the heart and realize that our first experiences with touch, taste, with learning, with all of the sensations was with mum. And your perception may be that mum had not served you at the time. That perhaps might be the perception. And if that's the case and you arrive at that, the question for you is, how can I find love in this moment, in this process? What's the small opportunity here? And can I perhaps maybe I can't love mum right now, if that's happening for you. But maybe we can love the fact that mum took us to primary school, or that she dropped us off and had to work. Maybe I can love that. Where can I find love in the process? And if we can open up that gateway, it's right there. That's where we can start. We can really begin to love the intimate moments, as opposed to having to just dive straight into, I don't really love mum. Maybe that's the perception. Maybe for others that are like me, that had a great relationship with mum, maybe there's more to discover. Perhaps there's more to love about mum. What was going on with mum when she had you? Did she really love dad? In my situation, mum didn't love dad. In fact, I've already asked for permission from mum to share this in some of the moments where it's required. But in fact, my mum was raped when she was 15 to have her first child. So she never was able to experience what it was to be a woman. She had to go straight into being a mother. She only just learned about having a period. How can I love mum for that? Because if I'm going to blame mum for all of the other victim things that I want to blame mum for, then I better well blame her for being an amazing woman, for having to overcome some of her adversities. If I'm going to blame her for all of the wrongs that she's done me, I better blame her for all of the rights as well. Can I love her there? And then what happened if that was her relationship with having to raise a child? Can I love her? What happened with me? What was going on? Why did she choose to have me? Well, she said to me that it was the right time. She had experienced uni and had some friends and worked a little bit, and she wanted to really give children and being a parent the right honor that it needed. Gosh, you got to love that too. Because I also blamed mum for the fact that we moved 16 times growing up, that gas and electricity was turned off, that I struggled so much having to learn, that I was afraid of having to go to kindergarten because I didn't want to socialize. I blamed mum that I didn't know my 1, 2, 3s and my ABCs when I was at prep, that all the kids would laugh at me. Mrs. Dixon in prep said that, oh no, you're going to have to go to a special school, Tumai. I blamed mum for that. That's for sure. And it wasn't until in grade 5, Mrs. Bowden sat me down and she said, Tumai, you can learn. You can do this. You just need the right teacher. And she gave me the space that I needed and the fact that she had hope in me. That's all I ever needed. Right. After that, year 7, 8, 9, 10, for some reason, I could read, I could write. I don't know what it was. Perhaps it was the hope. I started to talk to mum a little bit more about the education that I was learning. So if Tumai, you're going to blame mum for all of the hardships you've gone through, being a single mum raising 6 kids all on her own, you better blame her when you grow up to be a man, and blame her for all of the good that now that you echo through the whole world as well. So this is what reflection does for us. It matures us. It enables us to learn from the past, harmonize the past, not stay in the past, and not bring the past into the future, but view it from a third person and re-experience it in such a beautiful manner. And through the breath, we can float over these timelines and almost totally love and support that inner child that's looking up, tearing up to the fact that there's no shelter, that there's no food on the bench, or that he has to have cold showers every night before he goes to school, or tearing up because all the kids tease him because mum has a broken car and it breaks down in front of the primary school all the time. That little guy needs me and he needs support. So I'm going to send love to that guy too.
And that's really got me in the feels, because I like relate to that story a lot, like similar. And yeah, and I love how you said that too, because it's like, we don't, generally with people as well, and our parents, we don't give them, I guess, we don't sit back and reflect of what they've been through too, and how hard they're actually trying to overcome their stuff as well. And it's like, in actual fact, you can sit there and blame them for like not having all this stuff. Like I can sit here and ramble on for days if I really want to. But then I sit back and I look at like what my parents went through when they were a kid. Well, it would have been, like it's 10 times probably worse than what I went through, because they don't talk about it, or get like bits and pieces here and there. But then because they don't talk about it, I don't actually really know. But if I'm going to sit there and blame them for all this stuff, and I know for a fact they're trying their best, even though on the outside doesn't look like it. But that's the big thing. It's like everyone is trying their best with this, the cards they get dealt.
Yep, beautifully said. They are in the process of or the stage of unconscious to the fact that they are unconscious. They're merely looking at the shadows on the wall, trying to perceive what's happening, and they don't realize that if they stand up, they could see so much more. Now, we're in a generation where we're information rich. We have relatively amazing lifestyle to live from, yet why is it that we still choose to blame? What is it in us that chooses to live below the line and use language and vocabulary which is built towards having to make excuses, to float down the longest river of denial, and to blame everybody else except for ourselves? What's that all about, and what's going on here? So if we unpack that, we have built a freeway and a highway to depression, suppression, to suicide, to fear mentality, blame, shame, judgment of everybody else except ourselves. We have the fastest highway, both inside of every neuroplasticity, inside of our mind. Everything's tailored towards first pointing the finger at everything else. And we have this dirt road built towards success, love, joy, this heart-opening experience. We say we want that in life, but we don't build the pathways to support ourselves through that in each moment. So why do we do this? Wow, what's the shift, and how do we make a change? Well, the truth is that 5% of people live above the line, and the other remaining 95% of people live below the line. What does this all mean exactly? Below the whole line mentality is where we go to bed, BED. We make blame, we shame other people. E, we make excuses. D, we have this denial, which is the river that we float down. 95% of people walk down this pathway and they go to bed, and that's where most people are literally dead. So if that's the languaging, and if I interact with people and they're using this kind of languaging, I can immediately place them on where they play their life at, because it comes through in the words that they use to me and the projections that they have and how they carry themselves. You can instantly see it. I can't hear you, man, because your actions are louder than your words. I'm watching what people are saying and what they're doing. How do we move above the line, and what is above the line? It is the most harshest place to live. It's difficult by all measurements that we could possibly conceive. It's where we have an oar and we are rowing down a different paradigm. What if I told you that you could throw away the old rule sets that you govern by your lifetime, by your life, with your life? What if I told you that you could live above the line? And living above the line doesn't mean that it's easy. It doesn't mean that it's going to be all love and light all the time. It means that it's going to challenge you. There's going to be consistent reflection. You're going to need to call upon a power, ask for help, something, strength inside. When we live above the line, we have an oar, and that stands for O for ownership, A for accountability, and R for taking responsibility, or the ability to respond. These kind of people live every moment above the line. They push the envelope, and they are able to shape life to their beck and their call. They are the master of their fate, the captain of their soul. When you can live by your own rules, when you realize and mature and you step into the fact that you can take ownership, even for the things that weren't your fault. Yep, I own that too. If you want to blame me for that, Mr. or Mrs. or the partner or the sibling, blame me for that. I'll take that. Now, how can we meet each other and take ownership together? Is there a way that we could respond to this situation differently? This is the language that people that live above the line use. These are the questions that they use, and you can listen to it and hear people that live by these rules. People that live by these rules, they shape the world.
I was going to say, this is something over the last couple of months that I have really started to take ownership over. It's like, when a situation happens, it's like, where can I take ownership of this? Where, like, you know, as you know this for a fact, that I'm a big fan of Peter Crome, and he's got a quote, and it's like, life will present you with people and circumstances will reveal where you're not free. And when you actually embody that, you realize how many things that actually reflect onto you. And like with a little like personal story, I won't go too much into detail with it, but like I had something that happened where all parties didn't take any responsibility for like basically everything in this situation. And this is including myself as well. And when I actually sat back and reflected on it, I'm generally a person that waits until the last minute to take responsibility. And I knew for a fact, if I took responsibility straight away, that the situation would have solved itself. And then as I noticed, when I started to take responsibility, things started to, you know, play out the way that was meant to. And when I was reflecting on it, I was like, you know, this is just a big reflection of who I am as a person, and how much, you know, I wait till the very last minute to take responsibility. And then I started reverse engineer it and all that kind of stuff. And that's what I sat back with. And I'm like, okay, this is my time to, you know, take responsibility for things. And I'm going to take that next step into the next uncomfortable zone, and then make that a new comfort zone.
Yep. And that's the beauty in it, right? Because life is comfortable if you make it comfortable, but all of the excitement's out there. It's out of the uncomfortable. And if the recent one that I just totally changed the rules for the way that I interact with in relationships particularly, is I have this belief around boundaries. Boundaries are healthy, boundaries this, boundaries that. And you know, that's yet another opportunity to fine tune what our relationship is with boundaries. For if we have boundaries and we're creating a cotton wool mentality around the relationship, then that's further opportunity and recognition that there is yet more to share and more to lean into. The boundaries itself removes us from the excitement in life. But we want love, right? We want satisfaction, but I'll only want it in this cotton wool. So just hug me and touch me from a distance, but don't come too close. Really, is that the life that we want to experience? Really, is that boundaries? You want to live with boundaries, and you want the full human experience, and you want love, and you want heart-opening experiences. And I want the perfect girlfriend, by the way. Oh, and I want to be an entrepreneur and have an amazing bank account and financial bank account, right? But I also want boundaries. If that's the rules you play by, then enjoy being comfortable the rest of your life and experiencing everything through just looking in like almost like a keyhole in the door and just being able to only just smell life, only just hear laughter. If you want to open the door, I invite you to remove all boundaries, pick up the key, put it in that door, and open up the door of life. It'll give you everything that you could possibly dream of on a silver platter if only you had dared to dream, if only you had dared to take responsibility and ownership of your life and lean into the things that perhaps trigger you, the things that have this beautiful and amazing opportunities. All that we ever needed is within us, and that's the beauty in life. So the other beautiful thing about this framework that I'm reflecting on now as well, that I've just recently learned, and it's great because I can nuance it every single time I need to use this. And you can, as you can tell, I've chosen to install this kind of software inside of my own mind and my body, because if I didn't install it, I would have been installed with all of the settings, the normal settings that everybody else gets. Know this. There is always going to be something that grows in the garden, whether we choose to plant it with good seed, to render good fruit for everybody to enjoy, to make an impact, or whether we choose to not look at the garden at all and allow weeds to grow, something will always grow. So choose what to plant. Choose the program and software that you want to install. We can do that, You can choose your software. You can uninstall if you wanted to uninstall and reinstall whatever you like. The rules are yours to choose. And so the nuanced learning that I had just in the last 12 months on this particular subject is I've come across many disagreements, parts of me where I wanted to take responsibility. I did take responsibility, other parts where I didn't, and I didn't even have the conversation to meet somebody. When we are operating above the line day to day, and really, when no one's looking, really telling the truth to ourselves, really taking ownership and really taking responsibility, when we live by that, when no one is watching, but we're watching, what happens is our languaging changes. And when we get into a disagreement, an argument, or something that needs to be brought closer, the only task that is required of us is to raise people that live in the 95% above the line. That means that if you are worthy to hold yourself accountable to new rules, take ownership, then you are also worthy, and if you're a true friend, to hold your community, your loved ones, and people that you hold dear to the same level of ownership. That conversation plays out like this. Gosh, yep, I hear you. Thank you so much. And I take ownership of the fact that I hadn't communicated correctly to you. Man, can we find something to love in this opportunity? Where can we love? Or how can we come together and take more responsibility next time around? Can we do that together? People that live below the line have never heard this languaging before. They've never heard somebody hold them to that standard. So that is all that's required. All that's required of us is to raise people's vibration to above the line living. And when we do that, it also helps. And we can get friends that are always all rah and cheering us on. That's easy. True friends cheer us on, they push us for more, and they catch us when we need to be caught. And they also say, no, where can we be more responsible here? Where can we take ownership? That's what we're looking for when we look for communities and brothers and sisters around us. That's friendship. So yeah, let me know how that lands. I hope that makes sense.
Man, that ramp, it's like, especially the start with the boundaries. It's like, I've actually never heard anyone say that, because everyone, in the relationship world, we talk about boundaries so much, and that, but in actual fact, having boundaries so high actually stops you, as you're saying, stops you from living life to the fullest. And this is, and something that popped in my head when you were talking, going on that ramble, is like, so a video by Jason Silva, I think it was The Fear of Being Fully Alive. And this is something I've reflected on probably about last month. And I don't think it's generally the fear of death that is the biggest fear. It is the fear of being fully alive, like living life this close, like kind of thing. It's like fully experiencing everything, showing up and wholeheartedly as yourself. And, that's scary because, I guess a lot of people don't do that. But it's this weird correlation. We all want to be loved and accepted, but we won't show up full-heartedly as a self. So then we can fully, be loved and accepted.
It's so vulnerable, right? Because it's raw and it's real and it's close. We can go so much more back there. I've got to sort of talk right now.
I reckon let's do it.
There is one very particular part of me that was triggered with the book Conscious Loving and the journey from codependency to co-commitments. And one of the co-commitments that we make out of 6 of them, the 6 important ones, is the commitment to being fully close, and fully close to ourselves first. Now, in many aspects, that shows up in Jordan Peterson's world, for example, of telling the truth. In some other aspects, it shows up as embracing both masculine and feminine. But the commitment to being close and to resolving anything that stands in my way of being close. All of a sudden, the dynamic of that commitment changes more into a commitment for life, because we can never be fully close, but the process and journey towards as close as we can get, and noticing what pops up in each moment as we get triggered. There's different people, energy fields that converge with us. And how does that feel? How does it land with us? We never take the same breath ever again. So then in each breath, what's moving in this space? Can we become more sensitive to those sensations? How closely can we be with self? That one commitment, I spent a year on. Honestly, I spent a year on that one commitment of understanding it and unpacking what that meant to me. The benefits that it's rendered out the other side has been this real peace and alignment. Alignment is so important to me. And gone were the days where I would tell myself little microscopic white lies, where there would be a checkpoint of what I was thinking to what I'm saying. That's dissolved. How I speak is exactly how I talk to myself. There is no gap in between. My language right now is exactly how I am speaking in the shower to myself, to the affirmations, to when I'm going for a walk, to that level of closeness and alignment. It's completely changed my life. It has. There is no Visuddha throat block anymore. Things have cleared up in my jaw. I am happy to just truly be and say when I'm around a group of people, because it's true to me. And if I cared about anybody else's judgment, then they would have been in that co-commitment. They would have been a part of that, but they weren't. What's most important is just number one, this guy right here. If we take care of that, if everybody took care of number one, this guy, this girl, much like all of nature, the bumblebee that goes and collects honey for the hive, its level of consciousness, all it knows to do is to take care of number one itself and bring honey home for the hive. It just happens that in the transaction, it pollinates the world. But it wasn't its intention. Its only intention at its level of consciousness was to just gather pollen. Along the way, pollen fell out and it ended up just saving every other animal and experience that we're having right now. So to that level of closeness, can we really be close with ourselves first? We can talk about relationships and introduce another entity, another person, but truly there's so much to unpack with the relationship of self. This podcast could go on for days.
Yeah, because this is like, the relationship with self. This is like one of the parts of my 6-month program I'm actually writing. Is like, the relationship with self. How does your relationship with self look like? Because this is going to reflect into every other relationship that you have, because it's, we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are, and we create our own realities, which is internal, which reflects out kind of thing. And it's like, if you're not a nice person to yourself, that's going to, reflect out kind of thing. Or you're going to do really nice things, but it's going to be detrimental to self because you're going to be overdoing it. So you've got the polarities there, as we're talking about before. And this is something I love to talk about with people as well. I'm like, a lot of people have this want to save the world kind of thing. I'm like, just start by saving yourself. Like, if you start by yourself, and Jordan Peterson talks about this, it's like, start by cleaning your room, start working within, and then it kind of has the ripple effect out. And I don't think a lot more people are starting to realize this now, which is such a cool thing to see. But it's like, when we start taking care of self, we start taking care of everything around us, because if you're destroying self, you want to destroy the outside as well.
Yep, absolutely. And I mean, there's so much to unpack there. We could even use the framework of Plato's allegory and how there's 3 levels of consciousness, and understanding what's going on within ourselves here in the journey from consciousness level 1 all the way through to consciousness level 3. That is a great story and something to dive into. But yes, absolutely, brother. Self first. This is so much here that I could just dive into, to be honest, bro. And I really want to do it and honor it, what's required. A really good example that's present with us all at the moment is what's happening politically and with the government. What if I told you that every single moment we're creating, obviously the reality that we're creating, but we also asked for exactly what's happening right now. Consciously or unconsciously, we were given the government that was required of us. How do we now increase our requirements to ask for something better, to create something new? Because to be quite frank with everybody, the government that we're given is exactly what we've needed over the last few hundred years. Now we require a different way of living, a spiritual council, perhaps let's call it. We cannot perceive or understand what a spiritual council even means. We laugh at the concept because all we know and all we are addicted to is a government of control.
This is a mic drop moment.
So why am I saying this? What's the utility of it? The utility of it is that we're constantly creating and asking for things. What we're having right now, what we're receiving right now in this moment, we most likely asked over and over, consciously or unconsciously. That means if we take ownership and we operate above the line, we can also ask for a different way of living, a different way of governing, perhaps, and a different way of living together. If you understand the dynamics of the rules and how each element is influenced by us, the one key thing here is you. You feed what you choose to feed. The process will always remain the same. Just choose to feed it differently. That's all that matters. So start off with self first, absolutely, and everything else ripples from you.
100%, man. And I like when I did a lot of shadow work last year, especially between October and November, this is one of the things that came to mind was the political landscape, as we'll call it, and talking into. And I did this shadow work and I really started to understand my shadow. And then something that I did as well is realize that, the things that could be going on and all that, could be easily me, because it's a part of me as well. It's some of some of the deepest, darkest parts of us, we're able to create that kind of thing. And then a lot of the time is we can't recognize that, which is I'm trying to think of the Carl Jung quote. It's like, if you can't recognize your shadow, something along the lines of that. Someone will probably pick it up in the comments or something. That when you can't recognize it, you can't integrate it, you can't accept it. It plays out in so many aspects of our lives. And that's what that's what kind of leaders we got. We got leaders that are scared to admit their faults, admit their shadows. And that's probably the first step that we need to look at, is like, hey, this started, as bring it back full circle, just start taking self-responsibility.
Wow, good word. Omit. That's correct. That's the right use of that word. Absolutely. And so, as we can see, if the micro is the macro, if as within, so without, and as above, so below, then it's yet another beautiful reflection. What's happening out there is obviously another shadow, something that we can bring to the light. I invite everybody to bring closer to us to see how we can take responsibility of what we've brought into this space. There's so much that we could really influence, and it's definitely not done out on the streets, although that's an important component of things. It's actually done inside of our inner streets. Again, the pathway towards love, light, responsibility, and gratitude and joy, and all of the experiences that you chose to come back to this moment to achieve, or the dirt road towards failure, blame, shame, fear mentality, living in the worst city on the planet, scarcity, where everybody else is to blame. What pathway we choose to develop inside of our minds and inside of our bodies truly does affect how it plays out and up into the market in this macro world. The micro is the macro. It's all one. It's all the same. So just fall in love with yourself again. I invite everybody to have a good chuckle and giggle in the morning in the shower, to dance and to play, to have fun. The perspective on freedom even is interesting to look into. If you unpack it, and we're out there fighting for freedom, which is debatable. We never really fight for freedom. What's the experience, or what's really what's the act of freedom? If you're free, you never fight for freedom. Free people never fight for it. And of course, there's the idea there that we all have to fight for freedom. Yes, that's correct. In the old paradigm, where borderlines and flags and camaraderie and war existed, that idea is true. We would have to fight for our freedom. Again, what if you could throw that cage of living out, that paradigm, out of the door and create a new paradigm? Does that belief system still hold true in another paradigm where the rules have changed? Not necessarily. Where we have to fight for freedom in a world where there is no war, there is no borderlines. That we work from a spiritual council versus a government, where we are one race, a human race. Does that idea still hold true? No, not necessarily. So then what's the act of freedom? When people are free, they're creative, they have fun, they laugh, and they're playful. So how about, instead of fighting for freedom, how about we be more playful? Why don't we express more of the creativity that wants to flow through us? Because that is the act of, and it is the result of freedom, as opposed to focusing on freedom itself that's going to constantly move and evade us. Just focus on the result.
Yes, I love how you say that too. I'm pretty sure this is Viktor Frankl's quote, or he talks about in one of his books. It's like, best way to tell terrorism is actually making fun of it. It's not fighting against, it's actually, making fun of it. And that's how like the, Soviet Union actually fell down. It's because people just didn't take it seriously. They made fun of it. And it's like when you stop taking life so seriously, you find the freedom in that, because life's here to enjoy. Or, another quote by, say, Alan Watts is like, life is a dance, like kind of thing. It's like you dance to dance, and then life's here to enjoy.
When we adopt this way of living, everything changes. And, I thought I really understood that over the years. And I'm sure I have more lessons to learn about this beautiful subject. But right now, more than ever, I've really felt like that's come through for me over the last 2 years. And I chose to start to reprogram even more of myself. I already was a biohacking type of ninja, but even more so in the last 2 years, especially most recently, I lost and I had to take my car to mechanics. Get this, Mitchell. Over the 5 years that I've been into personal development, running business, and achieving everything and being the go-getter in all life and taking action, the law of action before the law of attraction, right? As we get closer and closer, just like that, bang, it hits magnet. Oh, law of attraction. I manifested into my life. I was more about the type of nature. For the first time last year, I had to take my car to do major service. I wasn't able to do the things that I would normally do, busy about life. And I had to be more still, silent, peaceful in the serenity of all things. And I had attracted more abundance than I had ever achieved over all of the previous years put together. The amazing partner that I have right now, the house that I've just recently moved into, the food that is in my fridge right now is different food than when I was the guy that was just trying to make a living, try, go. When I let go of all of that, I am in this beautiful space right now, and I am so grateful. I chose that. I chose that many months before. I put in my order. I asked for it. And what I ask for is also asking for me. What I want in life is also wanting me. It's deeply desiring to express itself through me. So in many ways, what do we have to lose? When you realize how much we're leaving on the table when we play below the line, when you really realize what's happening in this exchange, in this transaction, you'll instantly choose otherwise, because there is so much that we leave on the table. Lives that are left unimpacted, people that are left untouched, communities left unbuilt, and not to mention ourselves. So much that's wanting to express itself through ourselves, but we never even open the door. So we have permission. You have permission. If I have to give you permission, you have permission to knock on the door and ask all of life. So, you can tell I'm very passionate about all these subjects.
Yeah, I love it, man. I definitely love it. I'm actually getting, goosebumps about it, because it's like, that's like my biggest commitment this year. Instead of, getting stuck and trying to do the work and all this kind of stuff, it's just like, just been flow with it. I got goals, kind of, working still, but it's more in just enjoying it, being more play with it, being, still with it. And because this is like, when I was reflecting over my New Year's, this is something I really sat back and thought about. It's like for the last 3 years of being into, same as you, personal development, doing all the trauma work, all that kind of stuff, I really forgot to enjoy life. I was never present. I was too busy trying to like analyze stuff, what's going on when I was out with mates, and all this kind of stuff. And I was just like, man, I really have to commit to enjoy life instead of, trying to think of the next thing and the next big thing. And, that isn't always a bad thing. But sometimes just like, coming back, just taking that breath and just being grateful for that moment, having that conversation with that person, having a meal, looking at the stars, for example, beach, whatever, because those are the moments that we actually remember a lot. It's just like those subtle little moments. It's like, I was present for that. And, it was joyful. And could we ram it on a bunch of other words with that as well.
That's a great way to live, brother. Stay curious, stay with the inner child, keep the inner child next to you. Yeah, play full out. And, the great thing is with the goal setting aspect, it's like, actually, as I mature through the years, the goal setting in many spiritual world, it's more like, why do I need a goal set? And then in the highly activated personal development world, it's like, yeah, goal set. You set 3 goals last year. This year, we're going to set 5 goals. It's like totally opposite. The realization that I had is with all of these dynamics, it's actually like playing with and staying curious in the morning, commanding it and putting in your order. But now we've got a deeper connection with actually letting go of the order. And that really means that you're putting in the order in the right way with the right intention, because there is no attachment. You're open to everything and attached to nothing.
And it's just like, the future is just endless possibilities. And it's just like living in that energy. It's like, detach from what you think could happen and all this kind of stuff. Because, the future is just a conversation in our head. it's, as much as it can, like we can manifest stuff into reality, but it starts up here, kind of thing. And that's all it really is in this present moment, just a conversation that's going on in our head.
Yeah, a recent learning that I had, and I'll deliver this one really quickly, but the recent one that was profound for me was, I always practiced gratitude. I've got pages and pages of gratitude I used to do it every single day. My gratitude type of approach is actually a whole page of certain questions, and I hit them every single day. And over the years, maybe once a week, twice a week, for example. But to tune into gratitude was what my task was here. I'm quite committed to doing all of these small little habitual things. When I heard this, it completely changed the game for me. We all hear about, be grateful, or exchange your expectation for appreciation. We hear these terminologies, but what exactly does that mean? And it hit me, and like, if gratitude is the state of receivership, gratitude is the state of receivership. Gratitude is a state of receivership. And what that means is, come on, I'm open, I'm willing, I'm ready to receive. And I'm so grateful that my surprise gift is on its way today. I'm so ready to receive all of your bookings. So many people have been wanting to book me in, but I've been on holiday, to be honest. But I'm ready to receive them. And that's a state of receivership. So how can we use gratitude, if we don't have a reference point, if we have a reference point of what gratitude means to us, then that means we have to have a deeper connection to receiving and to receivership. This happens on many different layers. I would open up receivership to receive, say, for example, $200+ for a 2-hour session, for example, of breath work. But for that person to receive and have that kind of abundance, they would have to have enough receivership as well. And it ripples all the way through. So gratitude gets passed on. And I'm almost leaning into the fact that gratitude almost isn't ours to truly have, but much rather it's ours to give on to the next. So how can the other person learn how to receive if we're not grateful enough to let go and pass it on to the next person? The one thing that I received recently, yesterday, for example, is somebody else's treasure tomorrow. So can I yet again let go of something I received that was valuable to me and then give it? So gratitude is almost a process of receiving and giving. That completely changed the game to me. If you understand that process. Let me do it in another way, one more time. In the morning, I'd wake up, Tumai, so grateful. I am grateful for the food that is in my fridge. I am grateful for the shelter and the roof that's built over my head. Here's another few layers. I am grateful for the food in my fridge. I am grateful for the person that packed that food to be picked up from the farmer's market. Gosh, I am so grateful for the food that was at the farmer's market and the farmer that planted the seed. And you know who I'm so grateful for? I'm so grateful for the farmer that has a wife that has always supported him and made him dinner to come home to. Layer upon layer upon layer upon layer. And this can go on very, very far and very deep. At the surface level, everyone's grateful for the food in their fridge. The depth and the quality of your gratitude for that one thing can go all the way through if you consider and reflect it even more. So receivership, the state of receivership. Hopefully that resonates.
Yeah, it definitely does, man. Before I wrap on this last question, man, would you mind going through, I guess, a mini 5-minute breath work kind of thing just for the audience?
Sure, absolutely.
So I guess it's whatever you're feeling into this moment.
Fantastic. Today, maybe what we can do is we can experience a little more about opening up the hips and the spine. The spine is so important. It's a tree of life. For those that are listening, I invite you to first bring attention and notice to the environment that you're in right now. Perhaps your eyes will just gaze through to the walls, notice the ceiling and perhaps a cobweb in the corner. I invite you to start to soften your gaze. Still know that you're in this present moment with your eyes open. In today's breath, there'll be moments of silence to be at peace. I invite you to notice the difference in the space between the walls and to where you're situated in your room. Know that all of the magic is in between this fabric, and as you begin to give awareness or attention to the air that's being received by your nose or by your mouth, just see how it would like to touch you. How does it touch your body? Allow your eyes to slowly close in its own way. Just notice how your body would like to breathe in this moment. The beautiful part about breath awareness is noticing how the breath moves, but also notice how it isn't moving, how it's stuck. See whether your breath is deep and full, and open or free flowing. Perhaps it's a little tight in certain areas. Can you let go a little more to simply watch the breath? The level of attention that we give to the breath, I invite you to notice the sensations around the breath. Perhaps if you follow the breath through the body, chase it through your body. How is that experience right now? Allow the body to become more sensitive with each breath, letting go of the control of the breath and watching. The breath is a gateway towards both the conscious and the unconscious. In a moment, we can slowly start to bring more control to the breath. Before that, I invite you to send your mind's eye to the seat that you're sitting in right now and trace across the back of your legs on how you feel supported, how it almost catches you. Allow your body to really sit. It's safe for you to breathe. It's safe for you to feel. I am supported. From this place of support, I invite you to bring the breath, to merge the breath with a rotation of a movement through the hips. Inhale with one small circle and exhale with another small circle. All from the hips in this fixed position, having a smooth and rounded movement. One semicircle with the inhale and another semicircle with an exhale. inquire into your body. Is it the body that leads the movement, or is it the breath that leads the movement? As I begin to count down together, our movement becomes a little longer, it becomes a little bit more connected to the breath. We begin to move the movement through the lower back and the spine, and on my count, 5 seconds on the inhale and 8 seconds on the exhale. So in 3, 2, 1, inhaling, 2, 3, 4, 5, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, in, 2, 3, 4, 5, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, in, 2, out, 2, 3, in, 2, 3, out, 2, 3. Continuing to breathe in your own way, allowing the movement to be so connected to the breath. Give rise to the movement. Let it rise through the spine. Let it develop in its own way. Allow it to express itself. Continuing to breathe. Allow the pendulation and undulation through the spine become smooth, soft and centered. Allow it to grow to the tops of the spine and through the shoulders, continuing with the undulation. Remember to love. You see, breath is life, breath is love, it's movement. Notice how there is so much already moving in your body simply with the breath. And on my count, we're going to take a deep inhale together. And on the exhale, we'll bring the body and the spine back to center. So in 3, 2, 1, inhaling deeply in, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Exhale, coming back to center. Slowly releasing. And holding your breath at the bottom. When it feels safe for you to breathe, take that invitation. And also use the movement as a reference point. What is your bodily experience now within the stillness, within the silence? And when you're ready, taking the last 3 breaths nice and deep and open in your own way as you slowly come back to this space. And just know that we can take this feeling and this sensation into the next moment, the next conversation, or the next interaction. And slowly coming on back. Welcome home. Welcome back to your body.
Beautiful. That's only one word I could use for it. Thank you, brother. Sweet, man. To wrap it up on this question, man, what is one insight you would share to 15-year-old Tumai?
Say Tumai, I know that you're going through a lot right now in school and that mum's not around. Just know that at any moment that you choose, you can close your eyes and tap into anything that you could possibly need. And everybody is rooting for you, and just around the corner is the treasure that you're waiting for.
It's beautiful. I love that. Thank you, man. It was a pleasure doing this. There's so many, what's the word, coins, wisdom that was shared in this. And yeah, thanks for connecting, man. And yeah, there's going to be lots in the future.
Mitchell, thanks for having me, and thanks for everybody that's listening. Take care.
All right, cheers for tuning in today's podcast today, guys. Give it a like, comment, let us know what you think and all that jazz. Also, too, if you think it will value a friend, feel free to share it with them. What else too, if you want to support the podcast that little extra bit, feel free to head over to my website at www.mitchellcrocker.com to purchase a t-shirt, or head over to Patreon, which I'll link that down and below. And if there's any way that I can support you guys at all, feel free to send me a DM and any of my social media sites, or head over to mitchellcrocker.com for all my services and programs and all that kind of stuff. You need that extra support and all that. But yeah, thank you again for tuning in to today's podcast today, guys. Couldn't do this without you. But yeah, so peace.